Shabbat Shalom. This week I bought a broom for our new home. And as we were driving it back from Beth & Beyond, I thought about all the things that the broom would be sweeping. Crumbs from challahs, from Shabbat dinners with friends, little bits of cake from family celebrations, the inevitable, questionable, sticky messes from science projects and art projects. And this image was juxtaposed with another vision of a broom, a vision of a woman in Israel who has taken her broom down to the miklat, down to the bomb shelter, because she needs to sweep it out. In times of peace, the bomb shelters are often used as extra storage space for Passover dishes. But now she needs to make sure that it's ready for its true purpose, to protect her family from rockets. Israel is suffering this week, and once again we stand heartbroken as we watch another cycle of violence begin. In August of 2000, I had just completed university, and I traveled to Israel to do some studying in a yeshiva. And on Tish B'Av, the anniversary that we mark of the destruction of Jerusalem, my friend asked me if I wanted to go and hear Eicha, lamentations being chanted at the wall. I did, and it was a surreally beautiful moment. We were sitting at the base of the wall, and we were listening to the chanting, and it was twilight. So the muezzin at the Al-Aqsa Mosque made his call to prayer. And there was this amazing cacophony of sound, like something Stravinsky could have written. But it was peaceful and it was beautiful. And I didn't know then how rare those moments are in Israel. I didn't know that in July, the peace accords at Camp David had completely broken apart between Barak and Arafat. And I didn't know that several weeks later, the Second Intifada would break out. And I spent my next 2 years living in Israel weighing every decision to eat in a cafe or get on a bus. And I watched my husband go off to Miluim, to reserve duty. And though I knew he had a relatively safe posting, I worried every minute. And it feels like the same recurring nightmare, just this time it's rockets instead of suicide bombers. This is not what Herzl meant when he said, Im tirtzu enzo agada, if you want it, it is no dream. This violence that takes such a heavy toll on our flesh and on our spirits, both being subjected to being a victim of violence and terror, and being the one to carry the heavy burden of having to perpetrate violence. It's soul-rending. As Golda Meir said, I will come to forgive you for killing our sons, but I will never forgive you for forcing us to kill yours. This week's Parsha is Pinchas, and he committed a violent act, and he is in need of some shalom, of some wholeness. So we read at the end of last week's Parsha that the Israelites have begun to fraternize with Moabite women. And God is angry, and a terrible plague has broken out among the Israelites. Cosbi and Zimri, an Israelite prince and a Midianite princess, have gone into the tent of meeting to have sexual relations. And Pinchas can take it no longer, and he picks up a spear, and he enters the tent of meeting, and he stabs them both through with it. And the plague ceases. He stopped the plague, but it was at a great cost to himself. He's broken afterwards. In fact, Eleanor reminded me that when you're reading that word in the Torah, the Brit Shalom that he receives from God in this week's Parsha, during the aftermath, that in the word Shalom, the Vav is broken, as if his spirit can never be healed. And it's true, why does God have to give him a Brit Shalom? It seems a strange thing to happen after such a violent act. When we look at the retelling of the story in the Talmud in Sanhedrin, the people are angry at Pinchas. How could he dare to slay an Israelite prince? And they question the justice of him receiving no punishment for committing a capital offense. Israel too is like Pinchas. People challenge and question Israel's right to defend itself. And like Pinchas, Israel is in desperate need of a brit shalom from God, a wholeness, because for 66 years, violence has torn the nation. The Haftorah this week is of Elijah. Elijah is also known for his zealotry. In fact, the mystical tradition goes as far as to say that Elijah is a reincarnation of Pinchas, and the peace that Pinchas could not find in his own life because he was forced to take action, hopefully Elijah would find in his life. But the recounting that we hear here, he has not found peace. He has killed the prophets of Baal, and he has fled to the wilderness. And he says something that sounded to me almost like post-traumatic stress syndrome. He says, God, take my life. He's despondent. He's self-loathing. God responds not by taking his life, but by bringing him to a refuge. For God has something to teach Eliyahu. He puts him in a cave, and first there is a great wind. God is not in the wind. Then the earth shudders with earthquake, and God is not in the earthquake. Then a raging fire passes, and God is not in the fire. And finally, Elijah hears, Kol demama daka, the still, small voice. And after this revelation, God says to Elijah, to Eliyahu, you can give over your mantle of prophecy now. You no longer have to do this. What's interesting also about the parallels between Pinchas and Elijah is Elijah in a way also receives a brit shalom, a covenant of peace. We're told that he ascends to the heavens in a chariot of fire, but we're never actually told that he died. And for this reason, we invite Eliyahu to every brit milah, to every bris. We invite Eliyahu to every seder, and we say that he will be the herald of the Messiah and the harbinger of eternal peace. So his violence will be healed someday, God willing, with peace. In the meantime, though, what are we to do? We cannot end the violence. Israel does need to defend itself, so what can be a temporary refuge? Elijah had his cave, and it wasn't just any cave according to the Midrash. This cave had been used by Moses before him. The golden calf also ended in violence. Many people died. And afterwards, Moses is a broken man, and he goes to speak with God, and he says, I cannot do this any longer. If I have found favor in your sight, please, God, show your servant your glory. God says, man may not live and see my face, but I will put you in the cleft of the rock. I will put you in the cave. I will cover you with my hand, and you may see my back. And Masechet Rosh Hashanah says, what happened in that cave that caused Moses' face to shine afterwards? God taught Moses to pray. Specifically, he taught him the 13 attributes, which you'll hear us singing soon on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Adonai, Adonai. And what God tells Moses is, anytime that someone comes with a pure heart and sings this prayer, I will listen. So what is our cave today as we watch distressed? I think one thing we can do is prayer. There are communities around the globe who on Tuesday, this Tuesday, July 15th, have declared a day of fasting. Fasting is a form of prayer. It's a prayer you make with your whole body, without words. And the intention of the fast is to pray for reconciliation, for peace, for the safety of all. And I have reached out to the Turquoise Mosque. It's a Muslim community here in Dallas. And I've asked them if they'd like to join us for a prayer service on Tuesday night, because while there cannot be peace in Israel right now, there can be peace in Dallas. So please look for further communication, and if you have questions about the fast, I can send out more information about that too. Our Israel Action Committee has been in touch with our twin community, HaMinyan HaMishpachti in Kfar Varadim. We have expressed our solidarity, and on Sunday, some of our leaders will be Skyping with their rabbi to learn more about what their situation is and find out what it is we can do to help them specifically. And finally, the Jewish Federation of Greater Dallas has joined in a national campaign with other federations. The goal is to raise $10 million. The money will be used primarily to get youth out of Israel, at least for the summer, and to help the elderly who sometimes struggle to get to safety easily. So after Shabbat, you can go to the Federation's website and you can make a donation to help. And finally, I would say, we can counter the violence and the terrorism by being a little kinder here. When the 3 boys that were kidnapped and then murdered, Naftali, Ayal, and Gilad, one of the ways they were honored after their deaths with a random acts of kindness campaign. The belief is that on some cosmic level, if we can be a little kinder to each other in this piece of the globe, somehow it will counteract the cruelty we're seeing on the other side of the globe. Pinchas and Eliyahu committed acts of violence that were necessary. And right now, Israel must commit acts of violence that are tragically necessary. But it comes at such a heavy price. May God dwell with those who are suffering in Israel and in Palestine. For though I am a stark Zionist and I believe in Israel's right to defend itself, I wouldn't be a good spiritual leader if I couldn't acknowledge that there are innocent victims on the other side too. May our prayers come from that sincere place, from that cleft in the rock. May God beat swords into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks. May the brooms of Israel once again sweep up challah crumbs, and may the bomb shelters once again be filled with outgrown children's clothing and winter coats that are not needed. Shabbat Shalom.